Well, hello and welcome to another Charlie Crime Train episode. And boy, we got a doozy today. It's called Karen Read, Cop Killer, Cop Girlfriend. Which one is she? Is she a killer or is she a girlfriend? Well, James Buckland and I are going to talk all about that tonight as we discuss our last episode on Charlie Crime Buster. That episode being, of course, the episode number 2 of the Karen Read case, Cop Killer, Cop Girlfriend, episode number 2.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crime Buster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Boy, we got a doozy going on here, don't we, James?
We do. And Charlie, all right,
Yeah.
let's start off with this because I've got to know because you didn't disclose that in the podcast. But I mean, who is this next person that they arrested allegedly?
Well, that it gets crazier and crazier. He's called Turtle Boy, believe it or not.
Turtle Boy.
Yeah, Turtle Boy. And when I first heard about this, I thought, what in the world is going on with Turtle Boy? But this guy's he's got a very, very large following. He's a blogger, and he really got latched on to this case. It's very, very evident that he believes that Karen Read is innocent. And if you've seen some of the videos of some of the court proceedings, you notice there've been these huge crowds outside,
Right.
all cheering for Karen Read.
Yep.
I believe that probably he's the driving force for all that. I mean, he
Uh-huh.
really got that started, and I think that he is the one who probably brought this into a national attention. And but he's very, very bold, and he goes and he confronts the witnesses. The prosecution did not like these witnesses being confronted, so they went to the judge, and before you know it, Turtle Boy is arrested for
Wow.
intimidating witnesses.
Wow. Well,
Now,
good.
it's kind of hard for me to believe that a reporter like that, and he's a internet reporter, he's an influencer.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
hard for me to believe that he, when I looked at him, could really intimidate these big cops with guns,
Yeah.
because a lot of the witnesses are cops,
Uh-huh.
and so they say he's intimidating witnesses. But there's something more important in that situation. There's going to be another line of investigation, a line of court hearings. Is his attorney comes back and says, "Hey, he has the First Amendment right, freedom
Sure.
of speech,
That's
you
right.
know."
That's right.
And what's the difference between other reporters walking up to witnesses and say, "Hey, what do you think about it?" You don't have to talk to a reporter,
Exactly.
you don't have to get
Exactly.
involved in it. So there's a lot of controversy about this arrest. And then you come to think about it too, we know that the police department there, of course, have already under investigation. So was it that the police had undue influence to be able to stop this particular influencer because he was treading on their ground? I don't know. But
Mm.
we're going to talk a whole lot more, by the way, James, about Turtle Boy on our next episode. So
Okay.
I don't want to share too much of it about, but basically, Turtle Boy was arrested because they said he was intimidating witnesses. He says he was just enjoying his First Amendment rights, the freedom of speech, and he was asking questions. Now, there was one thing he did that I do not appreciate and I do not think is very, very ethical. He published the phone number of some of these cops. And, these cops, when you do that, it could put their lives in danger, and it could, people could run down the phone number, find out where they're living. And if
Sure.
you're a police officer, you have enemies out there because you've arrested a ton of people. So I don't like that, but we're going to tell a whole lot more about that next week. Hey, before we get it further into this, James, tell the folks about where they can find us in other areas on our social media platform.
Well, Charlie, they can find us. Well, first of all, if they have any comments or any suggestions or anything they want to bring to light to us here on the show, they
Sure.
can email us at charliecrambuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. If they want to support us, they can go to peacemakernetwork.com.
There you
And there
go.
they can become a badge, BADGE member for as little as $3 a month. That's less than a penny a day. And that supports our first responders, men and women of military, and our law enforcement personnel. So we want to help them as much as we can with PTSD, and also help them with suicide prevention as well. Then we also have our Facebook page, and that's Charlie Crime Buster. You can just right there, just search in the search bar, look for Charlie Crime Buster. You can Google us, type in Charlie Crime Buster, and you'll find us there as well. And then, of course, our website, where there's multiple episodes, charliecrimebuster.com, charliecrimebuster.com. And of course, our Twitter account is C_Crimebuster, C_Crimebuster. That's our X.com handle there. So they can reach us out to us at any time during any one of those social media channels. We'd be more than happy to have everybody tag along.
Yeah, we'd love to have them tag along. And, I was going to say, tell them about YouTube, but they're already on YouTube.
Exactly.
Right?
So you're already here. Guess what? You're
right
here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
You're already here. Yeah, we do welcome you. And if you do have any comments about the podcast, go ahead and reach out, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. You got some maybe suggestions about some future episodes or some way you'd like to see these episodes go, then we would love to hear your suggestions. You can ask questions. And as we say, you can disagree. That's always a safe space. So we always encourage folks to reach out with a shout out.
Reach out with a shout out. That's right. Reach out with a shout out. So Charlie, tell me this. Why is following a timeline so important in any investigation? So just so our audience knows why the timeline is so critical.
Well, James, if they've been following Charlie at all, if they've been following Charlie Crime Buster, they know that oftentimes when we get involved in a case, and boy, we've been involved in so many of them. Mm-hmm. That's why I do hope they'll go to our website. And a lot of times, as you know, James, we've been able to follow these cases in real time.
Right.
When you think about, the Doomsday Killer and all of that, with Lori Fallow and her children, we were there even before they found the children.
Right.
Same thing, with the Gabby Petito case and all that, the thing about most investigators always realize the importance of a timeline, because number one, it puts a case in perspective. The way it is today, there's so much media out there that there are so many different parts of the story that's thrown out there in different days, different times, different parts of the story. Well, a timeline gives you a perspective. You begin to see the story unfold, because all these crimes really are a story. We talk about, true crime junkies. One of the things that true crime junkies like is they like a story. And so it is a story, but you can't really tell the story unless you get the timeline in, exactly what happened where. The other thing about it is that I say it's a way for us to kind of put ourselves in the crime scene. And that's something that investigators often do. They try to put themselves there when it was happening. And so you always ask suspects, you try to say, tell me what you were doing up prior to this event, what you did during the event, what you did after the event. It also gives you an opportunity to identify suspects. For instance, now we know that there is the allegations by some that John O'Keefe did not die being hit by a car, but he died because he was in a fight and he was left in the snow to die. Now, whichever version of that you believe, if you were to believe that he was in a fight, so the next question you got to ask, okay, who would the suspects be? Well, unfortunately, the suspects that I know in this situation, if he was in a fight, were the people that were in that house where he died on that lawn. But you know what, James, something that is very unusual, and a lot of people are jumping on this, particularly the Karen Reed side. Did you know that day they did not even interview the owner of that home? They did not even wake him up. They did not even knock on the door when they were doing that crime scene. And they didn't even bother to interview him. So if there was a fight, there's a good possibility that the fight happened in the house. but the crime scene was all limited to the front yard.
Hmm.
So if there was a fight, there could have been evidence in that house,
Wow.
And so by the time that they got around to even looking at these other suspects, all that evidence, of course, the crime scene was already destroyed by that time. So now I'm not saying that he did have a fight in there, but I am saying we can't really know for sure now if there's any evidence there because, it was not investigated at the time. And that's why it's so important for investigators to look at every possible situation and not develop tunnel vision. These investigators developed tunnel vision right at the very beginning, and they thought they were basically investigating a car accident, a car that hit a person, a pedestrian, or like a car hit a pedestrian, only this time they thought that it was actually done on purpose. So the timeline just gives you so much better perspective at it, helps you define things about the case, and puts it kind of in a neat little package so you can follow the case a lot better.
Okay, well, thank you for making that clear to us, because that was one of the questions that has been posed on numerous occasions.
Yeah, you notice any investigator, that's the first thing you do. You want to put together a timeline. If you, even crime junkies who watch all kinds of legal stuff on television, even these real life investigators, you always notice they'll say, well, what did you do before this? What did you do during this time? You put together that timeline. Yep.
Right. Well, you mentioned that there was trouble in paradise. Doesn't this somewhat lead us to believe that she might be guilty?
Well, first of all, we all got to be reminded of all people that you're innocent until proven guilty. But that does throw a certain shade on it, that they were having problems. We know that they introduced in the trial, they introduced some of the voice messages where she said, I hate you. There was other situations where she accused him of being with another woman on vacation. So there was definitely trouble in paradise. But, if we arrested everybody that had trouble in paradise, I don't think there'd be enough jails to hold everybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has problems. So, a marriage isn't perfect. A relationship isn't perfect.
Right.
There's going to be ups and downs in a relationship. So that in itself, I do not think that means that she is guilty. On top of that, that very night, there were witnesses that came to the trial that said, the prosecutor saying, well, they were having problems. There was trouble in paradise. At the same time, witnesses came to the trial and said they observed them that night. One guy even said that his wife or his girlfriend or his significant other looked at them and said to him, man, why don't you treat me like that? He treats her so wonderful. And she treats each other. She said, you should treat me like that. So while some people say that the whole relationship was on the rocks, the other people say that they really loved each other. They really cared for each other. So I think that's kind of a washout, with the idea on that. I don't think it proves either way. And the other thing I want to point out is they brought in those texts, those terrible texts where she said, I hate you. And she was upset at him that night. When you come to think about it, that actually leads us to support that she didn't hit him and leave him for dead. I mean, if you hit somebody, left him dead, why would you then go home and leave voicemails that calls, say, I hate you and all that? Because you have to know that would incriminate you.
Right.
Because you'd have to know that the, law enforcement, the investigators are going to hear those voicemails. So if anything, the fact that she was upset at him on those texts, that could actually work to her advantage,
Well, whether it's a text message or it's a voice message or even a verbal message that someone has overheard, what about the statement? Can you self-incriminate yourself when you say, like when she said, I hit him. Does that mean that she is incriminating herself? I mean, what I'm saying is, do statements that we say self-incriminate us?
Yeah, we can. That's why everybody says, why we as police officers, will read people the Miranda right, the Miranda right, that you have the right to be silent. Anything you say can and will be used in court against you.
Mm-hmm.
And what she said was used in court against her, because there are people there who said, some of the people that first got there, and other people said, she said, I hit him. But in her own interview, she clarified it, attempted to clarify it. She said, I didn't say I hit him. She said, I said, did I hit him? Did I hit him? Because, I saw he was there in the snow. I didn't know how he got there. Is it possible that I hit him? I didn't understand it, So she said, did I hit him? And the other thing is, you do have to keep in mind, though, that when she got there, number one, she was hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, she was still intoxicated, because even when they took her to the hospital, she still had high content of alcohol. And, that's why when you're taking a statement from someone or you're interviewing someone, they call it interview today, James. We call it interrogations, just a soft way of saying it. But when you're interrogating somebody, you have to say, are you taking any medication? Are you intoxicated? Are you on drugs? Because taking a drug crazed statement, well, it doesn't have near the credibility of any other time. So I think both of these issues that we're talking about, and I think they're important issues. Number one, that they were having problems in paradise, and number two, an excited utterance that she said, he said, back and forth. I don't think either of those two would swing the podium, guilt or not guilty, to be honest with you.
Okay, let's kind of break it up a little bit. Just kind of take a breather for a moment. Tell us about this crazy crook story for this week. You can't make this stuff up.
And of course,
and again,
it had to be where Florida.
Exactly.
Florida. Yeah. I really don't just get out there and look for Florida stuff. It's just it overcomes us, James. It does. I mean, we can't get up one day without seeing some idiot here in Florida doing something stupid. And this Florida man, though, his name was Joseph Carl, 48 years of age, and he had if you've been around Florida or any place, you can see these big old pickup trucks going around. This was a Ram 1500 truck. And, if you're going to be a crazy crook, you probably, number one, should not drink alcohol. Mm-hmm. Number two, you should not participate in road rage.
All right.
Because this guy hit someone at a red light, jumped out and began to berate her and road rage, scared her to death. So she just pulled off, got out of the way, took off. But the crazy crook forgot to put that big Ram truck in drive. And so it began to roll, kind of down the hill, kind of a little slight grade to there. And, if you've had too much to drink and you're crazy, you get the idea that you could jump in front of that pickup truck and push it back up the hill.
Yep.
But he couldn't quite do that. In fact, he got run over, Thankfully, he wasn't seriously injured. So when the cops came, they found this idiot out there, this crazy crook, muttering to himself and reeked of alcohol. And they said, well, how much have you had to drink? And the first lie you usually hear when you ask that question out on the street is, oh, I haven't had anything to drink.
Uh-huh.
And then he finally changed that story. Well, I may have had 2 or 3. I was at a friend's house, only 2 or 3. I always told the people, if you had 1 or 2, they must have been really big ones that you had.
Right.
And so they gave him the sobriety test, but he refused the breathalyzer. So now, let me tell you how this guy's crazy. Number one, he's crazy because he shouldn't drive while drinking, right?
Right.
So number one, crazy for that. Number two, he was so crazy that he got out of his vehicle without putting it in park, okay? Mm-hmm. Number three, he was so crazy that he engaged in road rage. And we tell people in Charlie Crimebuster all the time, road rage doesn't work good for anybody.
That's right.
It's dangerous today. People get killed in road rage incidents. So don't get involved in it. Avoid it at all costs. So there's the 3 ways that he's crazy. But then, after that, he tries to stop the truck, which is the 4th way that he was crazy. But let me tell you something else. After he said that he refused the breathalyzer, This crazy guy says, my foot hurts. I need to go to the hospital. Well, guess what happens to people who refuse the breathalyzer when they go to the hospital, James?
They draw their blood.
They draw their blood, and that's why we know that this crazy crook was 0.22, 0.3 times, almost 3 times the limit for drunk driving. But so he says his foot's hurt. They take him to the hospital, and now the cops really have a slam dunk case. Now, I have been able to see people convicted for drunk driving without the breathalyzers who refused it because they failed the sobriety test. But it always helps to have that breathalyzer or a blood draw, because that takes the guess out of it.
Exactly.
People can say, well, I wasn't feeling well, and the cop interpreted, but you can't lie on the BAC count. You can't lie with the breathalyzer. So that really nails it. So, yep, that was our crazy crook, and boy, he was a crazy one, right?
He is. That's right. Well, and you also forgot to mention the fact that he had empty cans in the truck, and he had a cold one in the cup holder.
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. He truly deserves to be on the roster of Charlie Crimebuster's crazy crook, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to Karen Reed. Talk about the early morning text the next day. What's that all about?
I think this is critical.
How's that?
I think it's critical, but at the same time, there's two interpretations. This text, according to the defense, Jennifer McCade, we know that the text was not given by Karen Reed. It was actually Jennifer McCade gave her her phone. It basically said how long, to die in the code. And according to the defense, and they said they had a forensic investigator look at it, that it happened at 2:27 in the morning when that text was actually sent. Mm-hmm. Now, he wasn't found until the next day, like, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 something in the morning.
Right. So
if indeed that text was at 2:27 in the morning, that really puts a lot of, I think, a lot of suspicion on her, because that means she knew that he was lying out there in that yard and that he was in the code. And if that were true, then that means it's not Karen Reed's situation that she hit him with a truck, but it leaves more credence to the fact that he was in a fight and they just put him out in the yard.
Well, has she been arrested, this woman?
No, she hasn't.
Why not?
Because the prosecution's coming back and they're saying that that's a false read, that it really happened at 6:20 in the morning, a little after 6 in the morning, after they had found the body, or they were looking for the body, and Karen Reed was with them and looking for the body. So, it would be normal, if you're looking for a body and you think somebody's been out there, you and I would maybe Google, how long would it take for somebody to die in the cold like that?
Yeah, but why is there such a disparaging difference between the timeline of 6:27 and 2:27?
Well, that's the real question, because the defense is very staunch in saying that our forensic investigator says it's 2:27. The prosecution is very strong with their experts saying, no, it's read incorrectly. It's really happened at 6:20. So guess what? That's one of those things that the jury is going to have to decide who is telling the truth.
Wow.
So that is a very key piece of evidence, and if they could prove without a shadow of a doubt, that, well, here's the thing about it. Let's back up. Let me back up a moment.
Okay.
Karen Reed doesn't have to prove without a shadow of a doubt, right?
No, that's on the prosecution.
Yeah, that's the prosecution. All she's got to prove is reasonable doubt.
Exactly.
So I will certainly say that, in my opinion, that text does throw reasonable doubt on this case.
Absolutely.
So
that's why I brought up the point. Was it?
Yeah. It certainly shows reasonable doubt, and at the same time, it doesn't necessarily prove that she was involved in the fight, but it certainly throws reasonable doubt on Karen's situation.
It sure does. Well, in this episode, Charlie, You don't appear to be as staunch with law enforcement as you usually are. You're usually a good supporter. So what's up with that?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm just as much a supporter of law enforcement as I ever have been, but even other cops, I think, would tell you that nobody likes a bad cop. It actually it stains the badge. I used to talk to cops all the time and talk to them, as they're going through the academy and say, hey, do not stain the badge. Be honorable about it. Have ethics about it. And while at the same time, I certainly support all the brave men and women of law enforcement, and I'm proud that I wore the badge. I'm proud of everyone out there that's doing that. I'm not proud of the conduct of, particularly the lead investigator in this, Michael Proctor, because that's just not the way an investigator should hold themselves. Now, does that mean there certainly was police misconduct? That doesn't necessarily mean that the police misconduct means that there was a cover up. The defense is saying there was a cover up. I don't think that the police misconduct that I've seen at this point basically proves there were a cover up. I do believe that the police misconduct, certainly two things. I think it was a sloppy investigation and there was police misconduct. We're still working on this case. And I may, by the time we come to this end of series, I may say, James, I believe there was a cover up. I'm not to the point that I can say that yet. I'm not to the point that I can say it was not. But I do know there were some bad cops involved in this. And we know now that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator on this particular case, has now been suspended. And we do know that he's under investigation. And that's not good for the prosecution.
No.
Now, does that mean that what they found was all discounted? Not necessarily. I mean, there's going to be another trial at this, and they still could come back. But I'm telling you, Michael Proctor is not good news for them. So, he said some publicly. I mean, he was talking to, I think one of the greatest parts of this trial, not greatest, but one of the, I would say. Certainly something that was very interesting and was incredible was when the defense attorney, Michael Jackson, had Michael Proctor on the phone, and he had the texts that Michael Proctor had sent to other friends and other cops that was just saying some really cruel, very derogatory, hateful, negative things, assaulting verbally Karen Reed. And when he had to read those, I mean, he couldn't hold his head up high at all, because he knew that there was no way that a lead investigator, if anything, it really certainly led a lot of people to believe that he faced this investigation with bias. He was biased against her. I mean, it's very true that the things he said, he was negative to her. He was against her. He didn't like her. He said some terrible, terrible things about her. And that, that's just not right, and while I will do everything I can to support the brave men and women in law enforcement, I'm not going to support that kind of behavior by any officer. In fact, I'm going to stand with a lot of good cops and say, this is terrible. It should never happen.
Right. So what is the defense saying about this, though?
Well, when it gets down to it, there's a couple of things. The defense is basically saying he was murdered. Yep, they believe he was murdered. They agree with the prosecution. He was murdered. They just don't think he was murdered by Karen Reed. They think that there was a fight in that home, and they're saying that his injuries is not it does not characteristic of somebody being hit by a car. It's characteristic of somebody being beaten up. They brought in experts, and the wounds on his arm, they said, was likened to dog bites. We know that they're in the home, the owner, the sergeant, the other police officer of the Boston Police Department. We know that he had a large dog in there. And as we talked about last week, right, right very quickly, he got rid of the house, he got rid of the dog, and he got rid of his phone.
Mm.
So, that's not good. It's not a good impression at all. There are in fact two cops who, before the defense was able to get into the phones of other people, there were at least two cops here who got rid of their phones. And that's certainly not good. So they're basically saying, the defense is saying that he got in a fight in the house. They put his body out there to die, and the defense is saying there was a police cover-up. So that's basically Karen's case in a nutshell.
So what is the prosecution saying about the arguments that the defense is placing?
Well, Morrissey, the prosecutor, he said, I think probably the statement that he's well known for, he's saying conspiracy theories are not evidence. And he says that if you were to say that this was a cover-up, you would have to have the idea that there were multiple police departments, EMTs, fire personnel, medical, that they were all joined in together in a conspiracy. And he says there's not 1 ounce of evidence that there was a fight in the house. And I have to say he's true there. There is no evidence because they never looked for evidence.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that raises suspicion right there. And the fact that the other cops got rid of their phones and even sold their home and got rid of their dog. I mean, all those are suspicious and causes reasonable doubt.
I think that's exactly what you're saying. I think you're on target totally. It doesn't prove guilt.
No.
But it sure gives suspicion. You're right. It is not only, I would go a step further. I would not only say it's suspicion, James, I would say it's reasonable suspicion.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a difference between suspicion and reasonable suspicion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If I have reasonable suspicion, there are certain things I can do as a police officer that I could not do under just mere suspicion. They teach you that in the academy. You have a little thing there. You have suspicion, and then you have mere suspicion. Mm-hmm. Then you have reasonable suspicion, and then that turns into probable cause.
There you go.
And you're going down that line with this, no doubt about it. There are a lot of suspicious activity by a lot of people involved in this, and yet at the same time, there are those who have actually testified in this case. That here's what the medical examiner said, and I think I heard somebody say this, and I think this was pretty good, true. With it, she said when she was asked about whether the things that happened to John O'Keefe, how his body was there at the autopsy, they said, did it really, really, really prove that he was hit by a car? And her response was this. Now, listen to this. She said it was both likely and unlikely.
Likely and unlikely.
So as I heard somebody said, he said the prosecution's witnesses, pardon me, was they gave just as much of the defense as they gave to the prosecution.
Yeah. I mean, look at it like this. I mean, I was trying to ascertain a way that you could actually take, even in a fight, you could throw somebody's head into the rear end of a car. That's
true. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very possible that the altercation occurred at the house when they hit his head against her car, and then she drove home. She didn't hit him, but that's how the hair ended up in the lens of the light fixture.
Yeah. The only problem with that is that Karen said that she saw him leave and go up to the door, and so she didn't see a fight. You'd think she would know a fight. Now, hold on to that though, because you're very, very close to what I really believe happened there. And we'll get into that next week, because next week.
Well, that's what's coming next then. Oh, okay.
We've got some new stuff, man. We're going to be talking about Turtle Boy.
Okay. Turtle Boy.
Hang on to your hat.
All right.
We're going to talk next week about things that unexpectedly showed up in this trial. things that were not expected, that people did not expect. We got Turtle Boy, and guess what else? We got Crash Daddy.
Crash Daddy. Turtle Boy and Crash Daddy. Next episode.
Turtle Boy and Crash Daddy and Bad Cop. They're going to have those three. Turtle Boy, Crash Daddy, and Bad Cop.
And they're not the Three Musketeers.
That's right. They're not. But they're coming down the pike. And next week, we're going to show this. And that's going to get right into your theory of what you said. How did that tail light get cracked? And how did pieces of that tail light, actually end up near him? So
sure.
Remember now, Crash Daddy, Turtle Boy, and Bad Cop.
Right. Looking forward to it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Charlie. This was a lot of fun this week.
Yes, sir. We enjoy talking about these things, but
we do.
Let's not forget that everybody can agree on this. Both sides of the coin there. We all agree that John O'Keefe deserves justice. And Absolutely. He has not received it at this point. So we hope that in the coming days that something can happen to this investigation that will really lead to justice for John O'Keefe.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. So until next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep. For the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.